Meissonier did not begin the actual painting of his works until he had first made numerous preparatory sketches and studies, and he did not begin these until he had worked out the composition of the painting in the most elaborate detail, usually by means of a three-dimensional scale model of the scene. A number of painters had resorted to this strategy, from Michelangelo, who made wax figurines of many of the characters he painted, to the 18th century English landscapist Thomas Gainsborough, who fashioned tabletop models with sand, moss, twigs, bits of mirror for water or sky, and miniature horses and cows. But Meissonier, as ever, took matters a step or two farther. Thus, for the campaign of France, he sculpted in wax a series of highly detailed models, some 6 to 8 inches high, of Napoleon and his generals, as well as the horses on which they sat. These models he then arranged in his studio on a wooden platform, 4 feet square. He also made models of tumbrils and wagons, which he proceeded to drag across a muddy landscape, carefully moulded from clay spread on top of the platform, to create the furrowed road along which Napoleon trekked with his generals. He prided himself on these creations, considering himself, according to a friend, by turns tailor, saddler, joiner, cabinet maker. Absolutely nothing was left to chance or imagination. Everything had to be rigorously and impeccably correct. Meissonier had faced a problem, though, with his tableau vivant for the campaign of France. Despite the presence of Napoleon and his generals, this new painting was conceived as, first and foremost, a snowscape, a panorama in which the Grande Armée plods across a vast expanse of snow beneath a leaden sky. And since Meissonier would not paint anything without first having the correct specimen before his eyes, he had naturally found himself in need of snow. So across the expanse of furrowed clay, he had sprinkled handfuls of caster sugar, and to give his snow its glitter, pinches of salt. With a shod hoof, likewise executed in miniature, he then meticulously pressed the imprints of the horses' feet. The leadership of the Grande Armée was thereby devised in perfect effigy against the snowy landscape. "What an effect of snow I obtained!" Meissonier had proudly declared when the model was finished. Unfortunately, the caster sugar soon attracted the attention of bees from a neighbour's hive, forcing him to replace it with flour, which merely served to bring on another invasion of unwanted guests. "The mice came and ravaged my battlefield," he lamented, at which point Meissonier decided to stage the campaign of France on a larger scale, in the grounds of his house at Poissy. Work on this full-scale mock-up had begun around the summer of 1861, with elaborate plans and preparations more typical of staging an opera than painting a picture. Models were hired, costumes sewn, and a white horse, a double for Napoleon's charger, brought to Poissy from the stables of Napoleon III. Then, to simulate snow, vast quantities of flour were raked across the grounds of the Grande Maison, so much that at the end of each day, Meissonier's models and their horses needed to be de-whitened by a team of servants. Meanwhile, the escort of generals posed on horseback. The model serving for Marshal Ney, riding immediately behind Napoleon, wore his coat draped over his shoulders, like a cape, a sartorial detail Meissonier had picked up from a chance encounter in a train carriage with a medic who had served under Marshal Ney at the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. The coat itself was authentic, since Meissonier had borrowed it, along with the rest of the uniform, from Marshal Ney's son. The model serving for Napoleon was, of course, Meissonier himself. The seasons changed, and as winter arrived, Meissonier awaited a fall of real snow. When at last it came, he set busily to work. The team of servants was ordered to trample the ground and drag heavy carts back and forth through the mud, carving out deep ruts. The models were once more made to pose on horseback, notwithstanding the bitterly cold weather. Meissonier made sketches hurriedly for fear of a thaw destroying his wintry scene, or an outbreak of bright sunlight interfering with the cheerless grey sky he had planned for the painting. For reasons of speed, he engaged another model to assume the part of Napoleon and sit astride the white charger. But unfortunately, the man proved unequal to the task. He was a stout young man, Meissonier's son Charles, then 18, later remembered, and the riding coat was too small for the big fellow, while the hat fell over his eyes. Once again, therefore, Meissonier donned the riding coat and swung into the saddle. At this point, out of doors in the frigid weather, he really began to suffer for his art. Concerned friends suggested that he abandon the park for the warmth and comfort of his studio. But Meissonier objected that in order to capture the correct light and atmosphere, he needed to see his models set against a backdrop of cloud and snow.